Destiny 2, the sequel, is finally announced, and the reveal stream is right around the corner. Players are more than eager to just get a look at this game. Will it feature the same classes? Will it feature a bunch of new subclasses? New planets? What will the story focus on? What should we expect from this highly anticipated sequel? So many questions and theories were tossed around until finally, the day of the reveal stream came.
The wait is over. This is Destiny 2, and this is Homecoming.
First, let's get a quick overview of what we saw in the reveal. It kicked off with a Zavala backstory cutscene, which is a personal favorite of mine. This trailer alone had so many players hyped. Even the live audience was getting into it.
Shaped by the fires of each new battle, we are forged and sharpened into what we must become for the fight ahead.
It really set the tone for most of the stream. Just pure hype. Luke Smith would give a brief breakdown of what Destiny 2 meant to them and why they decided to go with a sequel instead of just continuing with Destiny 1. Finally, after his ramblings, Luke Smith presented us with the first mission of the Destiny 2 campaign, Homecoming. Now, the Homecoming mission is absolutely top-notch, and seeing this massive step up in the campaign's presentation had us all expecting this level of quality to remain throughout the entire campaign. Spoiler, that wouldn't be the case. Fighting through the old tower, having so many interactions with characters and NPCs, the game looked totally badass. Next, we'd get a Vidoc presented to us about Destiny 2 becoming a game about loss and recovery. A big baddie named Gaul who wanted to steal our light for himself, and most importantly, we got key details on some of the big changes coming to the game. For starters, the weapon slot change. Kinetic, energy, and power weapons. We also got a look at the game's new supers, Dawnblade, Sentinel, and Arcstrider. Things that easily impressed everyone, but I think we expected a little bit more. Maybe a new element type or a few more subclasses, but it did look good. A brief overview of the new campaign, the return of strike missions, and then we get to the Crucible. 4v4 across all game modes. The HUD display would now show players' supers, power ammo pickups, and a more focus on competitive gameplay. We'd get a look at some of the new worlds to explore and what activities awaited us on them. Additions like adventures, lost sectors, new public events, and new NPCs associated with each planet. Then we got a look at some changes to how clan systems would be more integrated into the game. And we also got a look at guided games, the somewhat failed raid matchmaking system. The reveal stream had so many people hyped, myself included, but I think I can speak for everyone when I say there were some red flags that players were a bit worried about. Two major things being the weapon slot changes and 4v4 competitive focused PvP. PvP players were more positive about the weapon slot changes being two primaries and one heavy or special weapon, but most PvE players really worried about how boring the PvE sandbox could potentially become. A worry that was very valid. Now, as for 4v4 competitive focused PvP, well, the PvP sweats were a bit more optimistic about the new competitive focus, but it brought a lot of worry to the more casual Crucible players. And I don't mean like really casual players, but those who just enjoyed the laid back Crucible experience in D1. I would say I was probably a bit more casual in PvP overall. However, I did spend probably 50% of my time in PvP and went flawless over 50 times in D1 trials, but I'm more casual in how I enjoyed the PvP in Destiny 1. Things like going into PvP after my fire team just completed a raid, just having some laid back fun. And now with it being 4v4 across all game modes, that wouldn't be possible for one, and so much of the conversation around it was that it was designed to be more competitive. And it had me worried and many others that it would no longer have that fun factor. Destiny PvP was never designed to be competitive from the start, and it's what made it so much fun in D1, and yes, a competitive scene kind of sprouted out of that, but that's how a lot of competitive games start out. A great, fun foundation not focused on competitive, and things sprout from that. But sometimes when they design things to be competitive, there's not the fun factor that brought us to love the game in the first place. About a month later, it would be announced by Luke Smith in an interview with Mashable that there aren't random rolls on weapons anymore. Better Devils is a Crucible hand cannon, and what it has on it is what it has on it. Period. How can my 2nd, 3rd, and 10th Better Devils hand cannon be interesting? That's a question we should be asking and answering as quickly as we can. We have ideas. This announcement in particular brought a bit of a divide in the community, as there were those who were happy about the change and thought it was probably going to be okay, likely a much more casual side of the audience, and then a much larger portion of the community, probably the majority, would immediately see the problem with this change. Random rolls on weapons and armor were a major part of the endgame in D1. Looter shooters lose a lot of excitement in general when the loot you get is static and stats never change no matter how many times you get them, and this was a major concern going into the game. But a month later, we would get the Destiny 2 beta in July, and players would finally get their hands on the game and see if some of their worries were overblown or if the game was actually able to pull off some of the core changes. The beta brought the Homecoming story mission, the Inverted Spire Strike, the Farm social space, and 2 Crucible maps. Impressions were pretty mixed. Going back and listening to a lot of players' first impressions of the beta, it's clear that players were trying to stay optimistic, but there was a lot of hesitancy in saying much positive or negative things. It felt like people were holding back and trying just to believe that it was going to be okay. And I think Dado explained it best for how many of us were feeling during the D2 beta.
The strike was, the strike. However, I've noticed that I'm getting team shot way more often in Destiny 2. The amount of 1v1s that happen have been very, very few, at least compared to Destiny 1. Destiny 2 appears to be all about team shotting. With regards to PvE, I'll reiterate that these changes make PvE a snooze fest compared to Destiny 1. And again, we don't know if gear and weapons will make our cooldowns resolve faster, but if there aren't items that do such a thing, then I think that would be a shame for the PvE scene. Having to wait over a minute for my grenade to come back is really, really boring gameplay-wise.
A lot of our worries were confirmed. Much slower recharge rate made PvP slightly more balanced, but less enjoyable, getting maybe 1 super in a match right towards the end. PvE was an absolute bore waiting over a minute for your grenade to recharge. Less fun supering enemies, and the double primary weapon change just did not feel good. It wasn't fun. PvP, the double primary system felt a bit more alright, but team shotting became the meta almost immediately. Players just peeking one lane, ADSing down a hallway waiting for someone to pop out of it. It was just so much less exciting than D1 PvP, even if it were more balanced. The strike took place on Nessus and was cool the first time around, but really didn't wow anybody. It felt pretty much the same as any D1 strike, and players had hoped that we'd see more significant improvements and changes to strikes. But this one just felt the same and wasn't all that special. I think the biggest highlight was probably the Homecoming mission, which we were able to fully play through this time, and it was really good and gave players a lot of hope that the rest of the campaign would be at this same standard. But that was it for the beta. Mostly underwhelming and brought more concerns to light rather than easing them. But like I said, a lot of people wanted to be wrong about their worries. Wanted Bungie to have some tricks up their sleeves and blow us away. Wanted Destiny 2 to live up to the expectations set by Destiny 1 by the end of Year 3. And it wasn't long before September 6th, 2017 arrived. Launch day. Players were playing through all the new content, looking forward to the endgame, and to our surprise, it happened a bit too quickly. But first, let's talk about the Red War campaign. How was it? Initially, impressions were that it was better than Destiny 1's vanilla campaign, which it was, but it didn't quite stack up to even the Taken King campaign for a few reasons. First was that the rest of the campaign after the first Homecoming mission just did not maintain a similar high quality. There were a few exceptions, like the one where you disable the Almighty's weapon, but for the most part, they were very much just like vanilla D1 story missions. Pull out your ghost, clear ads, door opens, do it again in the next room. The new characters like Hawthorne weren't really received too well either. Hawthorne wasn't really a likable character despite Bungie's best efforts to make us like her. Failsafe, Asher Mir, and Sloan were mostly disliked as well. I know there's a few people who like them, and that's fine, but for the most part they were just more annoying than anything. Devrim K was the only new NPC people really didn't have a problem with. The Vanguard had a lot more appearances and went off to each of the new planets to cope with their loss of the light. And despite that interesting premise, there wasn't a whole lot to do with them on their respective planets. Most of their story arcs were wrapped up in a couple missions and just felt rushed. It also was kind of hilarious that these guys went off and fled Earth to cope with losing the light when our Guardian was able to get our light back in the first 20 minutes of the campaign. It's just kind of comical writing that kind of kneecaps the whole idea of Destiny 2 being a game about loss and recovery, when both the loss and recovery happens in 20 minutes. We got a new social space to rebuild our strength, the farm, a place that would have been cool to slowly turn into something bigger and more fleshed out as time went by, yet only after a couple hours, the farm would be replaced by just another tower. So much for losing our old one because we have a new backup one that'll do just fine. Not utilizing the farm was such a missed opportunity. Gaul was a somewhat interesting villain. He didn't simply just want to take our light, but he wanted to be chosen by the Traveler to have the light. He needed his plan to work out in specific ways to fulfill his desired outcome, whether it be for greed or to fulfill some kind of prophecy he believed he was a part of. Overall, Gaul was fine as a villain. Killing him in the final mission of the campaign did feel a little bit silly though. I mean, he was so hyped up and talked about being the destroyer of worlds, and he died to one lowly guardian, me, who beat the campaign solo. It was just a bit deflating. And when you do kill him, he transforms into this light monster, and I thought maybe this could be him in his raid form, hell yes. But nope, the Traveler explodes and kills him. It was just such a goofy ending. The various new planets we visited were cool to explore, Nessus being a fan favorite as well as the EDZ. Titan and Io were pretty good as well, just a bit small and less interesting to most people, although I think Io really got more interesting over time, and Titan had some really cool Hive lore implications. The new activities on these destinations were pretty middling across the board though. Adventures were small post-campaign missions that dove into the backstory of various characters like Failsafe, Asher, and the other NPCs. Lost sectors were mini underground boss dungeons that were cool the first few times but weren't particularly rewarding or fun to rerun. And public events were mostly the same. A couple new ones, but a lot of returning ones as well. Strikes were pretty bog standard as far as strikes go. Taken King strikes were far better designed than the ones here. A few of these strikes were even hated right off the bat, like the Exodus Crash and the Lake of Shadows. And besides Savathun's song, they all just kind of felt samey, uninspired, a bit disconnected. The new raid, the Leviathan, was a bit of a brighter spot though. The location design was unique, the expansive area and underbelly was awesome to explore, and Callus was a good final boss. The rest of the raid had some interesting, more puzzle-oriented encounters, but were a bit boring and kind of underwhelming. And only one boss fight for the whole raid, Callus. I mean, coming off of something like Kingsfall and Wrath of the Machine, Leviathan just wasn't even close to comparing. And while the Leviathan's not a bad raid, it's not really a good one either. The loot, however, was probably its highlight. Midnight Coup, Inaugural Address, Legend of Acreus, all pretty cool weapons. The armor looked alright, and the shader was nice, so there were some bright spots. But the sandbox of the game in both PvE and PvP was just unbelievably boring. We felt so much less powerful than we did in D1. Movement was slower across all the classes, especially Titans who had their shoulder charge nerfed significantly. It hardly propelled you forward at all, so it couldn't be used for traversal. Recharge rates from things like your super, grenade, and melee were so dreadfully long that mostly all you were doing was shooting every single enemy with your primary. And this is when enemies were just much more bullet spongy. You and your teammates would be shooting one Cabal Centurion for 10 seconds to kill him, and that's just one ad. Supers were mostly nerfed, having a very short duration, Golden Gun especially, which ran out in like 4 seconds. And despite the new additions like Titan Barricade, Warlock Rift, and Hunter Dodges, which were all very cool, we still overall felt weak, and double primaries just made it that much worse. Endgame was lacking. Raids, Iron Banner, Trials of the Nine were all neutered in both their gameplay and rewards. Endgame became just public event farming, and with bounties being completely removed, public events would provide the best loot and XP. The state of the endgame was just bad. There was almost nothing to chase. Armor was changed in the worst way possible, whereas in Destiny 1 we had all sorts of stats to focus in order to make proper builds. Intellect, discipline, strength, all stats that could have you focus your armor around in order to reduce cooldowns. And Destiny 2 allowed for no such thing. Armor could only provide resilience, mobility, and recovery. And the worst part is, armor was statically rolled just like weapons. Armor from each vendor or planet was always the same roll. If you wanted specific stats, you had to wear that exact armor. And there were no chances of getting the better looking armor you wanted to wear with stats that you liked, because it was simply impossible. Vanguard and Crucible Rep was replaced with a token system, a system that streamlined the RPG aspect of increasing vendors' reputation. In D1 you would earn things for leveling up the tower's NPCs' ranks. Things like quests would open up, special ships, shaders, weapons, armor, and all of this was now replaced with tokens that would give you weapons and armor. Yes, but because they were static rolls, what was the point of getting them again? They couldn't be used to farm for a god roll because that horizontal progression was removed from the game. So now you just had stacks and stacks of tokens that would just give you the same weapons you've got 15 times already that don't have random rolls, so they're useless. Iron Banner and Trials of the Nine suffered the same consequences to this design, not only both being much watered down versions of their D1 counterparts in terms of gameplay, but having armor and weapons with static rolls, most of which were not good. It was awful. Token systems everywhere, even on our world vendors. Factions were stripped of their great passive progression in D1, and were now part of a monthly event called Faction Rallies, which had an interesting premise, but fell flat on its face because now there was no reason to pledge to a faction or be loyal to one. Only now you could pledge based on what reward there was that week. And because one faction would always have an option better than the others, 80% of the player base would just pledge to that one in order to get the reward. There was no kind of loyalty or, hey, I rep New Monarchy type of players anymore. Hawthorne in the Tower oversaw the clan system, and she would give you free loot so long as you had clanmates who did specific activities. So you could get free trials and raid gear by never stepping foot in either activity, just handing out endgame loot for nothing. The shader system was one of the worst changes, where in D1 you unlocked a shader and owned it forever. In D2 you had finite amounts of uses for them. Sure, they could be applied to individual items now, but let's say you wanted a new look and you wanted to try out some new shaders, but still wanted the shader you had on in case you wanted to switch back to it. Well, too bad. Hope you get lucky with some Eververse loot boxes. And Eververse. Oh my god, Eververse was at its worst here. Not only were the best looking cosmetic items in there, but so were all the good ships, shaders, sparrows, and ghost shells. Bright Engram loot boxes could be purchased that would give you mods as well, furthering the pay to win narrative building at the time. And while you could earn Bright Engrams every few XP levels, Bungie was caught throttling players' XP gains in order to encourage more Bright Engram purchases. It was all so bad. Destiny 2 just didn't feel like a sequel. It felt like an expansion for Destiny 1, yet had its foundation completely replaced and stripped from all its depth. It was a hollow experience by comparison. Players were not happy, and within a month, players were leaving the game in droves and making various rants on Reddit, YouTube, and other places, and it wasn't long before Bungie knew they dropped the ball with D2, and in late October would make a statement regarding changes they would be focusing on making for the game moving forward. Better incentives for dedicated players to actually replay things like strikes, adventures, and lost sectors, Crucible tweaks to both rewards and balance, as well as announcing private matches for early 2018, something Destiny 1 already had and was missing here for some reason. Buffs to various exotics as they were all feeling pretty weak in the sandbox, and quite a few changes coming to the mod system. Now most of these changes wouldn't be coming anytime soon, like spring 2018 at the earliest, and the game was in absolute shambles, and all players could do was wait. And if content in the first DLC was good, then maybe we wouldn't notice the long wait.
Get the expansion pass December 5th. 2 epic adventures, 1 great value.